Welcome back to episode 15 of the Mindsets podcast. Today I'm joined by Emily Merry, who's going to take over and do a bit of an introduction to herself.
Yes. Hello, I'm Emily. I am 26 years old from Guildford in Surrey. I work for Waitrose. Very recently left my position in branch, so that I literally had my last day 2 days ago, and I start my new role at head office tomorrow. I have my own baking business, so I make wedding cakes, cupcakes, birthday cakes. So yeah, quite random. And I'm basically been very kindly invited onto the Mindsets podcast today by Angus to talk about all things eating disorder recovery, body dysmorphia, and how that basically affected my relationship with fitness throughout that time of my life.
Cool. So it's worth mentioning that Emily isn't a complete stranger.
No.
We actually knew each other from back in primary school.
Yeah.
So near Guildford, which I've got my own opinions about Guildford as a place. I think it's quite bland and, you know, the night out choices are a bit bad.
Yeah.
Pleased to hear they've changed. So anyone that is aware of casino, that's closed. So apparently pubs is the place which I'm here
It's just
for.
like pubs and bars and stuff.
That's nice.
But yeah, I feel like it's gone uphill now that casino's gone.
Okay, cool. So I might actually reclaim that I'm from near enough Guildford rather than pretending I'm not. But we went to primary school just outside of Guildford called the Riley School. And we were on different sides of the school, so we didn't know each other too well. But like, you know what it's like. There's only 60 kids in a year at that school. Like, how far apart can you get? But then secondary school, pretty much everyone I knew from the Raleigh mainly went to the secondary school I did. Mm-hmm. And then you didn't. You went somewhere else. Where did you go?
I went to Guildford County School purely because my sister did. So she's 2 years older than me. So that's why I followed along in her footsteps. Very weird going to a secondary school where you don't know anyone. But yeah, good test of character that.
I was going to say, as a young kid going into a school where you don't have a well-established friendship group.
Yeah.
Quick adjustment, difficult?
It was hard, but luckily enough, my older sister had a best mate whose younger sister was also starting in the same year as me. And I've literally been best friends with her ever since. So I feel like once you find that one person,
you kind of pay your way through and go through it together.
Yeah. So it was a bit of an adjustment, but I feel that everything happens for a reason. So
did you find that your sort of hobbies and interests changed as a result of not having to do what old friends were doing?
Nothing like sticks out in my mind, but I know that at primary school I was very like into athletics, like really into it, because we used to do what's that competition? District sports,
yeah.
And I used to do that.
Yeah.
Really into it. I was massively into running, and I just didn't really carry on with that in secondary school. Just
decided to stop. Just wasn't interested in
I
PE
wasn't interested in it.
Sport.
No.
Fair enough. Just no extracurricular sport or anything like that either?
Didn't. No.
Okay, what took you away from it?
Do you know what? I think it was definitely a confidence thing. Mm-hmm. I just never thought I was very good at like a lot of team sports. I feel like athletics is obviously like
quite solo.
Yeah. And yeah, just I think the confidence to put myself back into that position of like running in front of loads of people, I just couldn't. I don't know why, but I just couldn't put myself in that position again. And
did that stop instantly, or was it tailed off and then it picked up again later on, or was it just like the whole of secondary school you're like, I'm done? Yeah,
I'd say the whole of secondary school.
Okay.
I didn't really get back into fitness. It wasn't until after the secondary school.
So fitness is a known way of like kind of giving some structure to life and controlling all sorts of things. Teenagehood is a known way of throwing everything off balance and like learning who you are as a person, changes mentally, physically, everything like that. I, in my past, relied on like playing sport as like the only thing that could get away from other situations and that sort of thing. That's something that I've become more aware of now looking back. What was your outlet?
I think I had a really good group of friends at school. I was very social. But looking back on it now, I think having some kind of commitment to sport probably would have meant that some of the things I ended up going through might not have happened.
Right.
Because you're saying obviously add structure to your life. I think not having structure from something that I had the confidence to do alone, like running, meant that I focused on like more negative aspects of life, which I will probably like lead on to later to talk about.
Negative aspects of life. What do you?
So like kind of like a self-control, food related. I think when you're into athletics or you're into some kind of sport, you have to be quite regimented with it, and it's like a commitment. And I think I lost a lot of that and channeled it into the wrong things. So we go on to like restrictive.
Yeah. So
dieting.
did restrictive dieting and stuff like that come as a result of, you know, like I said, when you're going through your teenage years, you start to become a bit more self-aware. Did it come as a personal body image, or was it through just, like you said, you weren't doing sport anymore and then you kind of lost the need to care about what you were eating?
I think a mixture of both.
Sure.
If I look back, I definitely wish I got more involved in like team sport. I feel like there's something around being part of a team and having that common interest. You've got a massive support network of people. And like I said, a really good group of friends, but everything that happened with me, I didn't tell anyone because it was just like a pure embarrassment thing. So yeah, does that really answer that?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm interested in is, did it all come from, was there one event which kickstarted a change in the way you thought, or was it like discovery of a different relationship with food and your personal image?
There's a couple of things that happened when I was at secondary school that really affected the way I saw myself. Really, like one thing to do with like a betrayal of friends, and another around a boy, unfortunately. And I think that really, really affected my self-worth and how I saw myself. And I'll always remember, and I don't know why it stuck in my head so much, we were all at a friend's house and I used to eat like quite a lot of rubbish food. And one of the girls was like, oh, let's order in a load of pizza. And I was like, well, I've been eating so much rubbish lately, like I really shouldn't. And she was like, oh, it's okay, like you can just throw it up later. And I don't know why, it just like stuck in my head for weeks afterwards. And then you start getting like social media involved and you see all these photos of girls with like literally like iron board stomachs and like toned and so like fit. And you're like, right, this is something I can control.
So did you make the assumption that they must be doing that, and that this is just, it sounds like that was a thing that in your head wasn't even a conceivable option before hearing that. And then it seems to be this thing that everyone knew about that you didn't. Is that what's going on?
And I always remember, like, you know, when you used to go out with your friends and maybe you drink a bit too much and then you'd be sick, but you'd always wake up in the morning and your stomach would be like flat because
oh right, I see, you got everything out.
And I started like thinking that's what I need to do.
I see.
To get that,
to control it. And
then it just became a habit
in daily life,
right, all the time. And that's where it basically started. Through being bulimic. So it was, you went down bulimia, and correct me if I'm wrong, because there's many different eating disorders. Bulimia is where you still eat, but then you basically just try and get that back out of your system so that there was a net zero impact. And then you've got anorexia, which is some of the same characteristics as bulimia, however you're trying not to eat at the same time. It's very restrictive, very restrictive. Controlled and obsessive. But with bulimia comes like binge eating. So I would just binge because I'd starve myself all day and then I'd be like, I'm so hungry. So then I'd binge and then basically be sick. Interesting
when it came to binging, because I assume you knew you were going to be sick. Did you just choose all your favorite things, or was it just like
just anything? Yeah.
Okay. And would you, it's difficult because I can appreciate this isn't something that you hear about from a friend and then you're just straight into being full on bulimic and that sort of thing. You probably gradually got into it.
Yeah, months.
You live at home as well when you're going through this. So how do you navigate that scenario when you're at home?
Yeah. So while it was going on, I was at school as well. So at school it was a lot easier, but at home I was so bad like talking about it now, but it would literally be things like I'd play music off my phone when I was in the bathroom, I'd run the taps so no one would hear me, I'd say I was going for a shower or like washing my hair, so my parents would expect me to be in the bathroom for like longer, and that's basically how I'd go about like getting away with it. And it was only I think it was probably about after a year and a half of doing this every day, multiple times a day, my mum caught me in the bathroom and she just went absolutely ballistic at me. She was so angry, but I know it was just out of a place of concern. And I just remember her being like, I'm going to go hardball on you now. Like, I'm watching you. And my relationship with her was really affected by this for months, because I was like, you're so mad at me. I feel like I can't talk to you about it. But I know now that it was just out of a place of love and worry. But at the time, I was just like, well, that's basically where the restrictive eating started, because I was like, well, if I can't get away with
being sick, so
I just need to start restricting.
Because one question I have on before your mum knew, and you were developing these habits and, if you like, ways to get around being caught, was there an element to it that was almost, and this is a very different way of looking at it, somewhat addictive to find new ways to cover things up, or was it quite satisfying getting away with it?
Yeah.
And then that was all slipped out?
Pretty much.
Right, okay.
And it sounds so like dark and twisted, but it's probably like the perfect way to describe it. It's literally like an addiction. And when you can get away with doing something that you know at the time is horrible to go through, but afterwards I'd like look at myself, I was obsessed with like seeing how small my stomach looked. I'd be like, right, that I've done the right thing. And
then you slipped into restrictive eating because it was like, oh, well, okay, so you caught me, and you can be hot on it all you like, but I can still do one more thing, which you can't control.
Yeah.
Interesting. So as well, for a little bit of context for those listening, I have seen the direct impact of eating disorders on my family. And it does put massive stress on relationships within the family. And like you said, that was a massive impact on your relationship between you and your mum. And it's very understandable, because you obviously have this mentality where you are trying to get away with it, and it is a bit addictive to do so. But then your family is also going to have the utmost concern, because they, not being in your shoes, are probably looking at long-term impacts and that sort of thing. And at the time, I imagine, are you thinking about long-term what's going on, or are you just thinking about day-to-day?
Just day-to-day. And now I'm out of it, I literally look back and think, what the hell was I doing? I feel like I wasted so many years of my life being so overly obsessed and doing so much damage to my body that I'm just like, you can't help but feel like shame over it. But also at the same time, I'm like, I've got to remember that I managed to pull myself out of that situation. So I need to try and see that I've learned stuff from it. It wasn't just a waste of my time. Like, I have learned a lot from it. And if I had to go through it again and have the relationship I have with food now and with fitness now, I would, because I don't eat anything now and think, well, I eat what I want. And I never ever, when I was younger, thought I'd ever get that again. I wouldn't go out for like dinners with my family. I wouldn't go out for dinners with my friends. I would just absolutely avoid it. So I missed out on a lot of social stuff, and a lot of like birthday celebrations. I was just I couldn't do it.
Right. And do you think at the time, again, it just didn't matter to you because you were on the daily task list was more get away with it?
Yeah.
Learn new ways to get away with it and have even more of a negative impact on you, which in a way weirdly was a positive impact on you mentally.
Yeah.
But then, like, yeah, big picture, you were missing out on quite a lot, but you probably didn't know what you were missing out on as well. So you've said you got discovered, you then changed and it became a bit more restrictive. Is there anything actually, interestingly, you just decided you absolutely were not going to eat anymore, or like you weren't interested in?
My diet consisted of water, minimal amounts, because I didn't want to like hold any water weight. I would eat egg whites, lettuce. This is so gross, by the way. I think about this now and I'm like, ugh. Yeah, egg whites, lettuce, cucumber, just really like bland, boring things. I would not eat pasta, rice, bread, nothing that could like make me bloat. I would weigh everything out. Like, you know, MyFitnessPal. I was addicted to that app. Honestly,
You needed to know every calorific.
everything. I bought. I don't know why I'm laughing because it's not funny, but I just think I was such an idiot. I bought a set of scales and I weighed out everything, literally.
I've seen that same thing happening.
And I was obsessed with it. And if I went out somewhere, like, or if I bought something from work, like apple slices, and you know you can like scan the barcode. If it didn't work, I would literally sit with the packet and like type it in everything individually, like carbohydrates, sugar, like all of that. And I would sit there and type it in because I had to know exactly how many calories I was having, how much like fat was in my diet, because I wanted it to be minimal fat, minimal carb. It was just obsessive.
And did you ignore the flavor of things? Like, did you ever crave stuff still?
At the start, from going from like the binging element to the restrictive element, yeah, because I was so used to just having everything, and then it was just, then I just got used to not having everything.
So then, how did you start taking steps to reverse what you'd done?
Therapy really helped. I basically was admitted to the eating disorder unit at Farnham Hospital. So I would go there weekly and I had a therapist. I didn't like about 3 of them, so I went through quite a few and I just couldn't connect with any of them. And then I met this one lady called Hilary and she absolutely changed my perspective on so much stuff. She was incredible. Honestly, some of the exercises she'd get me to do was so thought-provoking to the point where I will still think about them now.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, so one of my biggest issues was with my stomach. And I'll always remember one day she bought a really long bit of string. I'm sorry, I don't want to knock that. Probably about this long. Okay. And she was like, right, I want you to put this out on the floor of how big you think your stomach is and pinch it where it meets. So I was like, all right, I did that. And then she was like, right, stand in the middle of it and pull it up to over your stomach. And it was literally out here. So the way I saw my stomach and how big it was just so not reality. And she was like, does that not just tell you that what you're seeing when you look at yourself in the mirror is just not true? And so we went down the whole like body dysmorphia route. And it still sometimes can affect me now in the sense where I'll look at myself and be like, oh God, I need to sort that out. Because it was so, what's the word? Self-critical over everything. But I will just think about the string thing and I'm like, it's not real.
It's not real. And then from having those therapy sessions, so again, the impact that it had on my family, the person I know actually got admitted to a hospital, and they basically lived there. They were watched with their eating, and they had to basically just constantly be watched. Were you in a similar situation, or did you have your family support you through kind of changing your eating habits as well?
Yeah, my family were amazing support, and we did talk about the idea of me having to stay in a unit, but I just didn't want that. I didn't think I needed that, and I'm glad I didn't. I absolutely probably really does work for some people, but for me, I didn't want to be away from my mum and dad. And the idea of like sleeping in a place where I don't know anyone and just being watched all the time, the pressure, I was like, I just can't do it. When I look back, it's such a blur of like my recovery, because I'll remember really significant things, like the first time I had a Domino's after kind of going through everything, and it was like the flavour and everything just tasted like amazing. And I was like, why was I doing this? But then about half an hour later, I was like, I just had this thought, like, I need to be sick, like I can't. So there's times along the way where I definitely slipped up or something happened, but it took me years to get out of it, literally years.
Did you find that gradually bits of life were coming back? So you've obviously spoken about flavour was coming back,
yeah,
which is awesome. But then because you felt like now that you missed out on so much, did you find that you were able to go out with your family and start to rediscover that side of things as well. And was it that almost in a similar way to before, avoiding things was becoming a bit more addictive? Was it getting your life back started to become a little bit addictive?
A little bit, but there were times where, and again, this will always stick out in my memory, I would have to look up the menu of somewhere before I went, and it would have to be somewhere that had the calorie count on the menu. Because there's restaurants that do that.
Well, they've changed now. It's a law that they have to. But like before,
but at the time,
that was
there
very
wasn't
rare.
many places that did it. And we went to, I think it was Prezzo, when they had a Prezzo in Guildford. And we went, and I had an option and then a backup option. And I turned up and I ordered, and they were like, really sorry, we don't have that. And then I was like, okay, well, can I have this instead? And they didn't have that. And I just burst into tears at the table because I was like, I can't control what's happening. I don't know what to do. And I think I just ended up having like a side salad as my main because I freaked out. And I remember my dad being really annoyed at them. And I was like, but it's not their fault. But he was like, but I just want you to enjoy life again. So there were so many times like that where things would happen, but it's just a time thing.
And time wise, how long was your sort of dive into your eating disorders, and how long did it take to recover?
So the worst of it was when I was around 16, 17. That's when I lost the most weight because I was about 62 kilos, like healthy weight. And then I went down to 42. So I lost 20 kilos and that was probably the worst bit. And then I'd say it took about until I was around 22, where I was like, I'm good.
I'm on the other side.
Yeah.
You're actually in control.
Yeah.
And again, from the personal experience, there was some sort of therapy attempt which went one particular way, but it was trying to not feel blame for what happened in the past with this person in my family. They basically had an alter ego. So they gave it a name. They said that this alter ego is the person that wants you to be skinny. This is the person that wants you to do harm to yourself and that sort of thing in this way. But you don't, you want to be healthy. Let's get you back in control was the kind of way. And I think it was a bit of a strange way of approaching it. It might work for some people. Do you feel like it was an alter ego that took control, or do you feel like it was just your way of thinking was
I
changed?
think personally for me, just a way of thinking. I think I don't want to say as women because it definitely affects men as well, but statistically, if you look at it, women are, I think it's something ridiculous, like 80% of women in the UK, 80% of the statistic of people who have eating disorders in the UK are women. It's like 1.25 million people are affected with eating disorders. And I think we place so much pressure on ourselves to look a certain way, or social media has such an effect on this that I was just so obsessed with that.
Okay, interesting. And one of the things that is pretty commonplace, everyone comes out at this time of year. We've just had January. People have done dry January. People have done their New Year's resolutions to get in the gym, that sort of thing. At what point in your sort of journey did the gym come into your life?
So how old was I? It was probably around 21, 22 when I started going to the gym. And it was actually my boyfriend, Ryan, who you met a few weeks ago, who basically got me to start going. And I was so scared, especially of like the weight section. I was like, I'm not doing that. I was just such like a cardio. I'm just going to do that because like when I was at school, athletics and running, that was my thing. So I was like, I'm just going to be like a cardio person in the gym. And then I started weight training, and they've got a little room in the gym that I go to that felt a little bit like safer away from like the weights bit, and it had like the lower weights, like the 1 to 10 kg. And just over time, and this is where you see like the positive side of social media, where you've got the fitness influencers who you had on not so long ago who post the really helpful videos. I don't want to go up to like random people in the gym and be like, oh, show me how to do this. But those videos really helped me start getting into weight training. And that's where, because I've always wanted to be strong. And when I was really underweight, I was so weak. I was honestly like skin and bone. And I saw some photos of me the other day, and I was just absolutely mortified that I like looked the way I did, just like so gaunt, and like the gap between my legs was just, it was awful. So getting that strength back and actually seeing myself like pick up these weights, I'm like, that's actually unreal. Like, I'm so happy that I have the strength to do that now, because 16, 17-year-old me wouldn't have been able to pick up that amount of weight. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it starts to give you some confidence, and it's self-reflection again. So you're starting to self-reflect in like a positive way rather than a negative way, which is really cool. And how are you training now? What's the way that you train or approach fitness today?
So I try and aim to do like 4 sessions a week on average. I split my days, so I'll do like a glutes and hamstrings day, I'll have a quads day, and then I try to do a bit more upper body now. I was definitely just so like legs focused, but I'll do back and biceps, shoulders. I'm by no means one of like, you know, the super strong girls in there. I have seen some girls in that gym that have such small frames, but they can pick up some unreal amount of weight. And that's what that inspires me. I'm like, that's what I want to be able to do. So yeah, I think that answers your question.
And well, yeah, I mean, the next thing is tied into the way that you train. Do you now use food as fuel for your training as well? So what's your take on that?
I just honestly eat when I'm hungry. And this is how I always wanted it to be. I eat when I'm hungry, and I eat when I'm hungry quite a lot. So I just eat whatever.
Little and often, and just actually keeping yourself topped up.
Yeah, I do. I know we were speaking about this before about ordering lots of food in, which is probably my bad habit. But when I have my better habits, it is very much a lot of meal prep, and it would always be bringing food into work. Firstly, to save money, but secondly, that I'm still retaining that bit of control over my diet. I know what I've put into that food. I know what I've cooked with. And I think as well with the gym, that's where I'm also channeling my self-control, making myself get up and go. Whereas before, I was controlling myself by not eating and literally going for walks like 4 times a day to burn off anything I had eaten. So watching that change of my relationship with both food and fitness is so satisfying, just to see like that there was a healthy way to do life.
Yeah, one difficulty with training and in the gym is obviously progress is quite slow. And for someone that has previously had so much control over certain things in their life, do you have like this really nice respect for how long some things can take, or do you find sometimes that you get irritated because you don't have the control over getting to that goal quickly?
I wouldn't say I get irritated, because one thing I did when I started going to the gym post traveling, I wrote down all the weight. So I've got like on my notes on my phone, all the exercises that I do most weeks, and then the weights I'm starting from coming back from traveling, which was like 5 months ago, 6 months ago, something like that. So whenever I'm feeling demotivated, I'll scroll right back up to the top of my notes and see what weight I started on when I came back. And I'm like, it's fine. I'm okay.
You're just aiming for progressive overload and the growth and getting there. So with traveling then, I went traveling at the same time. And actually this is how Emily and I got back in contact with each other. So it's a bit weird. I feel really weird having done what I did, but I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
I went off traveling last year to Asia. Those guys that have listened to podcast episode 3 will know that was episode 4 was recorded while I was out traveling. But I had a great time. I was traveling for like 5 months. But before I went away, I noticed that you and Ryan, your boyfriend, had gone out to Thailand, and you were out there over Christmas and that sort of thing. And I hadn't spoken to you since year 6 of primary school.
Yeah.
And I messaged you and I just said, hey, any chance you've got any good advice and that sort of thing? And completely unexpectedly, you gave me so much information. And from there, you were like 1 or 2 countries ahead of us all the time. So I could ask you for loads of advice.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is really interesting is a lot of that advice was good places to eat as well. So having been someone that's had previous eating disorders and has now got into training, one of the things that slips up massively when you're traveling, purely because you're tired, you aren't in a place long enough to find a gym, let alone have like a gym membership or a routine. How did you tackle the lack of routine and crazy different amounts of food and different styles of food. Yeah. How did you find that?
I loved it. I literally loved it. I feel like if I was at home and that had happened, I wouldn't have coped. But because you're so wrapped up in like, you're spending 3-4 days in one place and then you're constantly packing, constantly moving, just being so much more like forgiving with myself was such a freeing experience. No one cares as well. Literally no one cares. And I think I learned just to not care from that trip. I think it did me absolute wonders. At times I was like, I really feel like a gym session. And the state of some of those gyms were horrendous. The equipment looked like it was from like the 80s and everything's like falling off it. Or there's like no aircon and you just can't, you can't like
New
motivate
levels
yourself.
of sweat production,
But then you just can't feel like you can train to your best because it's just like, I just couldn't be bothered. But I was happy that I couldn't be bothered because I was like, this is actually so nice. And food wise, I loved it. Trying new stuff all the time, some be a bit weird. I think I posted about some McDonald's doing like chicken noodle porridge. I think you replied to it and I was like, this is just the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And I think I ate beetles and all sorts of stuff. But I was just like, why not? I'm here.
For me, and I feel like you'll probably agree, when you go to a culture that's like that, and this is one of the beauties of traveling, you experience very, very different culture, but it took me a few weeks to really realize that you go from being in this country, and for someone that now works an office job 5 days a week, I meal prep. I tend to have the same sort of meals every week. I tend to do the same gym routine every week. Most people that I speak to at work that are also relatively active have a very similar schedule. It's almost, for us, it would be a little bit strange if one of them was like, oh, I just didn't feel like it this week.
Yeah.
You know, it's in Western culture, the gym is such a standard thing to do. Having the same meals every week is a standard thing to do. But when you get out there, the accessibility of food being so diverse, also so cheap, so it's so easy to do for us as well. But then out there, the culture doesn't rely on the gym or anything like that. So you can, like, it's very normal to just not even think about it.
Yeah.
And then, yes, it does come around where for whatever reason we feel the need or the urge to go to the gym. You can do. Like you said, you still don't even have to have a crazy session because arguably I don't really want to move too much because I will be dripping in sweat. I just want to go in, move something heavy around, reconfirm that I can still move said heavy thing around.
Yeah.
And I haven't lost that. And then go off and have like a massive portion of pad thai or something like that. I think for me, it was really relieving. It took like a weight of stress, which I didn't appreciate I was giving myself in having to stick to my routine and kind of stepping off it, but realizing that, do you know what? Life doesn't fall apart. Like, yeah, things, sometimes you'll be like, oh, I really wish I was doing this and that, but life goes on and you actually, by giving yourself more time back and giving yourself a chance to experience more things, suddenly when you do get to go to the gym, it's more valuable.
Yeah.
Rather than just being a place, oh, I have to go. If I don't go, I won't do this. If I won't look a certain way. Whereas, you start seeing a different side of the world.
Oh, 100%. And I think that while we were there, why would I want to spend all my time in a gym when I'm literally in some of the most beautiful places on earth and I can go and, I don't know, get on the bike and go see some waterfall or go to the beach? Because we did try and stay quite active, like lots of hiking and lots of swimming and all that kind of stuff. So I just thought, why? I can pick this back up when I'm home. And even just saying that to myself, I was like, shit, this is actually really good that I'm not like, I need to do this now. I need to fix this now. Because it wasn't a situation of fixing anything. It was just like, this is my time in life to just enjoy it and do whatever I want. And if I fancy going to the gym, I can. But if I don't, then there were so many times where Ryan went to the gym and I was like, oh, I'm not going.
Just go to the beach.
Yeah.
Cheers. Yeah.
So, see ya.
I think that's the other thing as well, is the food portions, especially for me. Like, I know that typically I can eat a lot. And when I'd go out there, the portion size would come and it'd obviously be a lot smaller because the average person, believe it or not, is not tall or does not weigh like 100-ish kilos.
Yeah.
So for me, I was actually losing a dramatic amount of weight and I was aware of it. And at times I'd look at myself and be like, oh, shit, like I have messed up a little bit here. But again, then it was the same thing. It's like, there's nothing I can do about it now. I'd rather enjoy this time, so when I go back and I'm in the gym, I can look back on the happy memories of doing fun stuff, rather than make a half-assed attempt at chasing it now, getting back into some sweaty pure gym and being like, do you know what, I actually wish I had gone to a waterfall or gone to the beach. But then coming back and going into a pure gym wasn't actually that fun. How did you ease back into things?
How long did it take me? I think I renewed my membership at the gym after like a couple weeks, and that classic like gym fear came in, and I went with Ryan a couple times just to like ease myself back into it. But while I was away, they actually redid my gym, so they had a whole like bottom floor redone, and that space is so good. You do find that most of the girls tend to go down there because there's like hip thrust stations everywhere. There's a massive floor space. There are some like heavy weights down there. So I still spend a lot of my time down there. But it took, a couple of weeks, I'd say. It took me to like get back into it. But I think I've just absolutely like renewed my love for it. And it's my routine. I will fit it in as many times as I can in the week because I don't feel like it's an unhealthy addiction for me. I feel like I balance it out really well now.
That's good.
So yeah.
So one of the newer sections for the year is listener questions. I've had some lovely people message in. Guys, if you're listening to this and you didn't know that was a thing, then get to know. If you head over to the Instagram page at mindsets_podcast, when I've got episodes upcoming, I'll put up a little bit of a profile overview of who could be coming on, and then you guys can go ahead and ask questions. So question number 1 today has come from Alina. Alina wants to know what your thoughts on social media influence and changes that have been made so far. What are your thoughts on those? So social media, people posting certain pictures, that sort of thing. Things are starting to change a little bit, but what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, because we already touched a little bit on social media. I made the decision to unfollow everyone, be it a friend or like a celebrity and influencer that didn't make me feel good, which I know can sound quite cutthroat, but I was like, I'm the one who's having to look at this. I don't like what I'm seeing. It's making me like reflect on myself negatively. And I changed it. And a lot of people I follow now, there's this lady, I don't know how to pronounce her name. I think it's like Danae Mercer, something like that. And she posts so much like body positivity, really good comparison photos about like, so one photo like posed of her and then the next one like relaxed, that kind of thing, just to show like the tricks with like lighting and posing, and that it's just not real. And even with things like skin and like, you know, I'd be a real thing of like, oh, I just hate my skin texture, or I don't like this and I don't like that. And girls are like, it's literally just lighting. It's literally just good lighting. It's literally not real. All the celebrity photos that are like touched up, they're not real. So I think social media can be really damaging, especially for like younger people now. But I also can think it can be a platform that can ignite self-love. I think it just depends who you follow and how you use it.
Okay, and I think, that self-love thing is something that's coming through. And I want to start calling it Project Fix Fitness, because like fitness has been a broken industry where it boomed. I mean, it came out, YouTubers, everything like that. Gymshark grew massively when it got going, and Gymshark have done a very good job, as have other companies, of, you know, learning that not everyone has got six-pack abs, and that's a bit of a confined market. But for so long, people pushed on that market and took advantage of these people that wanted to look a certain way without having respect for actually how achievable that is and what, you know, impacts it has on your life, not just physically but mentally, trying to achieve that. And things are starting to change, which is really good. And I think it is trying to fix fitness a little bit, because it is such a positive thing to have in your life, but in the last 10 years it has been abused.
Oh, definitely. 100%.
And the impacts, I mean, you've seen firsthand the impacts that it can have on younger people.
I do also think as well, you'll get some people who pose as like influencers, like fitness influencers, who have had so much work done. There's one girl who had like a BBL done but didn't tell anyone, and then marketed it as she got this through doing her workouts. So was selling her workouts to people. And you just think, I have no issue, by the way, with like people getting work done. I think if you want to do that and that's going to make you happy, absolutely do it. But don't market something like incorrectly, because people are firstly going to waste their money. They're going to get frustrated because they're not going to see those kind of results as quickly as you're saying they're going to. And that can in itself, I think, can be quite dangerous.
It is effectively, I mean, it's false advertising for one, but it's basically fraud.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, is there's a lot that happened in the fitness industry where that was allowed for a while, because no one really expected it to actually be happening, so you could get away with it. And I think people are starting to crack down on who's natural, who's not, who's spreading the right messages, that sort of thing, which is good. And it's some sort of regulation. But I think the damage is still being done, but there's definitely a heavy amount of damage done on young people that are more easily influenced, really.
Definitely.
Cool. So there's your answer, Alina. Question 2 is for actually anonymous. But they want to know, do you think there needs to be more education in school around disordered eating?
I think yes and no. No, because in a weird way, I don't want it to go putting ideas into people's heads. But yes, because I think awareness is so important. I don't think it's talked about enough how detrimental it can be to young men and women and older men and women, because I know it can affect people like later in life as well. So it's a tricky one. I think if it had happened around me and I'd seen it, I'd just be looking at it, as badly as it sounds, I would be looking at it as a way of like, oh, okay, I'm going to start doing that then. But for people who are trying to support people going through it, I definitely think it's something worth looking into. So I know that's a bit of a wishy-washy answer, but I can't decide
there's
which
kind of
way.
Pros and cons. I think it would be the sort of thing that if it was brought in, would need to be very, very carefully reviewed.
Done,
Probably put together by people who have come out on the other side.
Yeah.
So can know what you risk by. You don't want to accidentally give someone a piece of advice on how to get away with it.
Yeah.
You want to give awareness of maybe this is what someone could be doing that you could be aware of and not do.
And also, no one person is the same. Like, you don't know how someone is going to cope with a bit of advice. I see like a couple people around where I live who I know are going through it. You can see it, like they're stick thin. And all I want to do is go over and say, believe me when I say it is so much better on the other side. You do not need to be doing this yourself, but you just don't know how that person's going to react. And I wish there was like some magic response like you could use for everyone that would just make the penny drop and then be like, I don't need to do this, but there isn't. So everyone's, I think, got their own way of coping with it. It's just sad.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Last question then. Jack wants to know, do you ever fully recover?
Ooh, that's so hard. I think that personally for me, I can eat anything I want, I can exercise, but there are definitely times where I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have had that, maybe I shouldn't have had this. The mental side of it and the almost like self-loathing sometimes, I don't think will ever go away. I think that's always going to be something that I struggle with. My confidence is massively improved since. So from that perspective, I still think I will always be affected from it. Just again, because of things like social media and that the judgmental side of society. But I think there is hope. Some people might take them a couple of years and they're out of it. It might take other people 40 years. But I think everyone has the ability to be all right again and to be fully recovered from it.
One thing that I've never thought about is that I guess if you've recovered from it, you may not appreciate what a normal level of those thoughts is.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
I think for me, I think pretty much everyone listening to this definitely has a thing. And if we're being completely honest, maybe daily, probably at least once a week where they eat something and go, oh, probably shouldn't have done that. Or I didn't do the workout, so I probably shouldn't be having this for dinner. But I can appreciate for someone that's come from the history that you've had with food, that might be you thinking, oh, I'm still doing it. But there is a relative degree of normality in that. I mean, you can't be a person that thinks that eating Domino's 5 days a week, 3 meals a day is going to be healthy.
No.
That's an obvious case.
Yeah.
But still, like, if I was to sit down and have a Domino's, I'd probably find a way to justify it and that sort of thing. But even I at the time would be like, should I have eaten the crusts and the dip? Or should I have just eaten the meat and that sort of thing? But yeah, I think that's... it's difficult to know the level of normality for yourself.
Yeah. And even when it comes to training as well. So, and I know, again, when Vicky did her podcast, she spoke about female menstrual cycles and how that affects your training. So when I go through that period where I'm like, I've only been once this week because I just didn't feel like I could. And in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, I probably should have been more. So that still affects me 100% because of how good I feel after my session. And when I don't have that kind of high, I'm a bit like, you just feel a bit sluggish. But then, like you say, is that normal? Because I feel like everyone who loves training will probably feel like that when they don't go. So then what even is normal? Like, I don't think there is any normal.
I think that's the thing that's really difficult. And like we already spoke about, when you go traveling, you kind of discover a new normal in a different culture. And I think it's just... ultimately, normal is never one thing. You have to find what's normal for you and accept that if you're going to set a tone of what is normal, deviating from that one way or another, positively or negatively, you need to watch it. Because if you redefine normal and it's actually worse for you, then you need to stop redefining normal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you can play with it a little bit and find out what actually works in a way that is balanced, rather than... not just great for you physically, but terrible for you mentally, and not great for you mentally, but not terrible for you physically. You need to find that in those relationships. But no, I thought that was interesting. Thank you for your question, Jack.
Yes, thank you.
So talking about self-reflection, and you just mentioned a few minutes ago how you can see other people going through it and you want to be able to go over and give them some advice. But you don't know how other people are going to react.
Yeah.
You know yourself pretty well by now. If you were locked in a room with a younger version of yourself and you could give them 3 pieces of advice, what would those 3 pieces of advice be?
Ooh, I think the first one, and I say this to a lot of my friends, they'll be like, oh, she's saying this again. The way I view my life now is, and every decision I make, I sit there and think, okay, imagine I'm literally on my deathbed and I'm looking back on this moment. How am I going to react to this? And that's how I decide what I'm going to, do, whether it be right or wrong. So if I looked and spoke to myself as a little girl, I just want to say, nothing in life is serious enough to be worrying this much over. There is no, unless you kill someone, there is nothing that matters, and no one's going to remember what you've done, what you've said, or how you look. They're just going to remember how you treated them. And I think I have a picture, this is so cringe, but I have a picture of me as a little girl in my room. And I do sometimes look at it and feel guilty for what I put her through. And I know it's probably not like 3 things, like I haven't defined 3 separate things, so I do apologise. But yeah, I feel guilty for what I put her through. So I think the first thing I would say is nothing serious and no one cares what you're doing. The second one would be, this is so hard because I feel like that's so vague because nothing is serious. Second one would be, family is so important and nothing is worth missing out on time with them for. So missing out on dinners out, all that kind of stuff. And I think the third one would be, don't get social media until a bit later in life.
Try and avoid it as long as possible.
Yeah. Because I literally see people, like I have a pretty bad TikTok addiction at the moment. And there are girls on there who are like still at school posting like videos of them like getting ready for school. And their makeup routine is like flawless. Their hair's like in rollers and it's just so serious. And I feel like that is the time where you need to be so unserious and not care about that kind of stuff. So I think 100% I'd be like, don't get it until you're like
I
left
think,
school.
and I was talking to someone else about this recently, the thing that is really scary for me is social media was once a tool to stay in contact with your friends, and it was very normal to message people and like see each other's photos, see what each other are up to, really nice, that kind of thing. And then social media got really smart.
Yeah.
Social media was something that we used to use. I feel like social media now uses us. You have an algorithm that works out what you're interested in. Now, it doesn't necessarily care what you say you're interested in. It cares about what you spend your time doing.
Yeah.
Which can be two very, very different things. So you start watching a type of influencer or a person who wants to share all their daily habits, that kind of thing, and you actually like the way they like their videos. You like the way it's edited, that sort of thing. It grabs you. Great. You're going to watch a lot of that. You're going to start doing things like that person naturally because you're going to inherit those habits.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you will keep coming back to that for dopamine and all these sorts of reasons. And you naturally probably wouldn't have done that. If I asked you, oh, who's your favorite influencer? They might not even be in the top like 5 when you're telling me. However, when you're on your phone, actually they take up a lot of your time and you've started to adjust your life
to it.
And I think that's the massive issue, especially with dependence on social media. And we have to be dependent on it to a certain degree. We're not actually as in control as we think we are.
No.
And the problem is that when you're not in control of things like that and how you spend your free time, you're also not in control of how you spend the rest of your time. So if you are inheriting these other habits that you're seeing in videos, you're bringing that into your daily life. All of a sudden, what you're doing on your phone isn't just on your phone. It's now in your life.
Yeah.
And so that's really scary for me.
Oh, 100%. And I feel like it's just like a boredom thing as well. And that's something that I probably want to focus on more this year, is not just filling up my like downtime with just like scrolling, because half of it's so pointless. Some of it's really useful. Like you think about things like this and like the positive side of it, that's great. But then when I'm just like endlessly scrolling in the evening, afterwards I'm like, why did I just waste like an hour of my life doing something that's actually really quite boring?
I think the other thing as well, and this is interesting, is you could put out some really useful advice, something that could change a lot of people's lives. If you ask anyone, do they want self-help when they go on social media? The answer is probably not. Like, I want to go and look at nice food. I want to see nice recipes. I want to see cool things to do. So a lot of the most useful information does get avoided because it doesn't give the dopamine or attention span that a person goes onto the social media for.
Yeah.
And so there is an element to some of the healthier things that are on there, because they don't get engagement, never go anywhere. And so you just end up in this downward spiral of people getting addicted to doing things with their life that they shouldn't be because they're not being allowed to see it, if that makes sense. So yeah, wake up. If this is a sign to you to maybe put your phone down, then you can do so. Right. There's also one more question, which is from the previous guest. So Glenn was on the episode last week talking about the Super Bowl, that sort of thing. His question going forward was, what is one thing that you've done or something that's happened to you that you didn't want people to know about? Which is a tough question. I don't want you to incriminate yourself.
Yeah.
So just if this question suddenly jumps at the end, I'm just doing it for legal reasons. That's all it's going to
Oh God. Something I've done or something that's happened to me. I would say when I was probably at my skinniest, like really unwell, I would have comments all the time from the older people that I worked with, because it was while I was at Waitrose in the branch. I'd get them all the time, but they'd say them just to me. So they'd be really like silly things like, oh, you look skinny as a rake, or like something like that, like, oh, you look really pale, oh, your face looks gaunt, like stuff like that. And I would be so embarrassed that people even knew that I looked that way. Does that make sense? Like the fact that they'd even noticed that I was like underweight. It was a weird thing because I wanted so bad to be skinny, but when they were saying it, I was like, I don't want like people to notice. And it had such an effect on me. It's the weirdest thing. Like, it's so twisted. And I'll always remember there was one day when I was in my recovery, and it was while I was at work, and I'd put weight on. I was feeling like better about myself. And one of the ladies, it was just the complete flip side of this, said to me at work, "You're looking really healthy." And I was like, healthy means I've put weight on. And I hadn't been sick in this like maybe like year and a half. And I just immediately went to the toilet and threw up. And I never told anyone that. I never told my mum and dad. I didn't tell my boyfriend at the time. And I was so embarrassed that I'd like let myself slip back into it. But it just goes to show that someone might think they're giving you like a good positive comment, but you just don't know how someone's going to react. Like what we spoke about earlier, you could try and make someone feel better and try and support someone through this kind of thing. Every single person is different.
Wow.
So I'd probably say that would be, yeah.
Firstly, thank you for
Sorry,
sharing
Mum and Dad.
Thank you for sharing that. Sorry, Mum and Dad, that that's the way you found out. But that, I think, is a really valuable lesson. So thank you for sharing that.
That's okay.
You get your own back, though. So you can ask the question for the next guest.
Okay.
Not knowing anything about them. What do you want to know?
I think it's quite a nice one. And it's quite vague, so it should hopefully be like an easy one to answer.
Okay.
But I would say my question would be, what or who is your biggest inspiration in life and why?
Okay, I like that. That's really good. I can't wait to see who it is.
Yeah.
I hope they just say it's me. No, I'm joking. Awesome. Well, that rounds off a really, really cool episode. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And I hope that not only do the listeners that are well registered and are here a lot of the time get something out of that, but I hope if there's any new listeners that feel they've learned something or it's kind of opened your eyes on a different opinion on things, that's the purpose. That's 100%. The point. So
I said to you before, didn't I? I was like so nervous to talk about this, but if it literally helps just one person to know that whatever it is you're going through, it is not permanent. There are so many people who love and care about you and will 100% listen. Mate, literally message me. I will gladly chat with anyone about it because life is so much better on the other side. 100%.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, just message me on Instagram. It's Emily Mary is my app.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Don't message the other page, which you can plug as well briefly. What's the other page?
It's at Mary Bakes. So that's my baking account. I need to get much better at posting because I haven't actually posted anything on it since coming back from traveling. But yeah, so any wedding cakes, cupcakes, let me know.
Awesome. And guys, thank you very much for tuning in. I've mentioned before, obviously, you can get involved with some of the listener questions over at mindsets_podcast on Instagram. It's the same social media handle for everywhere. I've tried to make it as easy as possible. I also got fundamentally lucky with that. So do follow, subscribe, share, like, all of that means so much and helps us to continue to grow and tell more interesting stories and get more interesting viewpoints and advice. So thank you very much again for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode.
Thank you.